Weebs.
So my name's Matty, and I am going to paint a Tau Ethereal on hover drone for my buddy Zatanos. He told me he wanted me to, despite it not being Farsight Enclaves, or them not being allowed in Farsight Enclaves, to kind of do it in a similar theme anyway. So we're going to try to replicate kind of what we're doing with his Farsight Enclaves army. So there's going to be a lot of blacks, reds, and a little bit of like a tan color somewhere if I can find a good place for it. But I think what I probably want to get started with is going to be the little robe thing that he's got going on there. I think I'm going to go for like a red color there. Pretty sure that's like the best answer. So I'm going to start out with Crusted Sore from Army Painter. It's a pretty deep red, so it should hopefully give us a bit of a nice dark base color. Definitely a paint you got to be patient with. Doesn't always feel like it really goes on very good the first layer, particularly if it's thinner, but if you do it too thick, then it definitely gets kind of clogged up and gross looking. That's pretty sweet looking. Since we're going with all these like reds and blacks, he said he also wanted some kind of like dark theme. I don't know, a dark ethereal or something. So I'm gonna try to give him like an angry look going. And he's got some pretty angry eyes there. I don't know if you can see that. It's the first time I've ever actually seen a Tau in person that wasn't completely covered in body armor. Oh no, actually Farsight creatures and stuff. That's a good point. I'm forgetting them. They still have like helmets and things. This guy's letting his fish face fly free. This guy's got some pretty good Tau elephant feet going on too. Yeah, they could be bovine feet. I don't know. They're weird. They got big toenails. Kind of done this kind of color robes before on my Thousand Sons army with Ahriman and one of my Exalted Sorcerers. It's pretty nice, dark crimson. So that is gonna have to dry for the rest there. And then for this front bit, he's got slightly different like color to some of his units. He does a little bit of tan in them as well. So I think I'm gonna try to find a way to get a tan color in there. I think I'm gonna start with Desert Yellow. I think that may be a good place to start. So this guy, I put him together just like maybe an hour ago. Airbrushed him with Vallejo airbrush primer. You could also do it by hand if you've got, you know, spray cans or whatever. So Ethereal has joined the Farsight Enclave, but that's the flavor it's gonna be. I want to keep his armor in the center. I want to keep that black there, so I'm not going to change that. But what I noticed is, like, the end of this guy's sword is the same color as his armor, except for these little flaps here. So I think I want to do those little flaps in the same kind of tan color, since that's like the third color of his army. It's nice to have some extra accent colors in there. So he's got a little bit of white in his Farsight Enclave scheme, but that white's specifically around these Tau symbols. I guess I can kind of go ahead and do that now. Kind of a pain because they're really kind of streaky, chalky paints. So generally, one of the best things you can do if you're working your way up from pretty dark color, use something that's not white, like a gray or some other kind of color, and slowly work your way up. So I like to start with ash gray. Farsight Enclaves is like a little mushroom in a kind of white center. So we gotta establish that white there. It's a bit weird on this centerpiece on the ethereal because it's not the perfect, you know, circle that the Tau symbol usually is. That looks like a pentagon. Not quite sure what those things are, actually. It looks like they're not the same Tau symbols. I don't think I'm going to paint them as if they are. I think I might do some kind of metallic color there later. He's got a little gold in that. That could be cool. Looks like the yellow is kind of dried out, so go back over and do another layer of the desert yellow on all the parts that we wanted to do a little bit tan. So that's definitely going to need a third layer in there. You know what? I think I want this to be an old man, like an old ethereal. I think decided his little braid over here is going to be an old man braid. Maybe that's why he joins Farsight. He's an old Tau. He's been around the block. I don't think I'll give him red eyes. Seems like it could be too much red. Then again, he doesn't have much of the red armor plating that Farsight Enclaves would typically have. And he is supposed to look kind of sinister and stuff. Guess I can get a little red in there. Alright. And then, actually, there's a drone down here too. I should be remembering the drone. So, I think, if I recall, he's doing his drones with red or tan. I think I'm just going to go with tan for this guy. Oh, sorry, not tan, red for this guy. Again, sinister and evil, and not evil, but not for the greatest good. You know what, some of these underbits of the shield drone I think I could do in tan as well, just to break up the color if you look at it from a different angle. You know, the more I paint, the more I realize I'm forgetting all this hover drone detail, which is actually a pretty dang good portion of the model. Actually, I think I have an idea of what to do next with him. I think that little flag that's there, I think I want to do that in white, and he's just like sitting over it triumphantly. There's a skull down here too, so I need to make sure I hit that guy up with a little bit of white to get him at least, or a little gray to get him at least a little brighter. Let's try to get some skin down and see if we can get him looking a little bit more like a Tau instead of just primer. Army Painter, Deep Blue. Oh, it is inverted. Rob, can you figure out how to... Oop, there we go. Now you're gonna have to edit that in the recording.
Editor Brian here. Matt normally talks about the models he's painting. Well, since I run Tau, I figured I'd step in and talk a little about the Tau army. Something about the space communists really caught my attention. I don't know if it was the community race that on the surface looked like they're all working together, or if it was the giant alien robot mech suits. Alright, let's be real. It was the giant alien mech suits. As Matt mentioned, I normally run Farsight, so I don't get a lot of use out of these ethereal, but I still appreciate the way the cast has advanced the Tau. There is plenty of debate about what methods they've used to do that, whether it be mind control or pheromones, but what is undeniable is that in the 7,000 years that the Tau were discovered, they have shot out into the stars and made themselves an empire.
I don't know how I want to take this guy from here. If I want to keep him like dark spooky blue or like old man kind of faded pale pasty blue. He's kind of pale blue on that, and I think it'd be cooler to go angrier. It's tough when it's the first model of its type that you painted and you don't really have like a good foundation for what you're doing yet. Like I painted a Tau model before, but that model was all armor and cloth, no angry face. But it's okay, I mess it up, whatevs. From here, I'm probably gonna do the staff next. I think I want metals. I'm gonna start with this adamantium. This is Pathfinder Paizo Ink Master Series paint, 89556 adamantine. It's a pretty dark looking metallic. This one, I want to do this one on the beads that he's holding in his hand, and I think also on the handle of the staff that he's holding, just to give it a little bit of a metal look without it being a very bright and vivid one. Now I'm going to use some Army Painter True Copper. and some army painter shining silver now. I think I'm going to do a little bit of gray on these big toenail things here too, just to lighten them up a step before I start putting skeleton bone on them. Hooves, nails, claws, I don't know. So I got some tidying up that I need to do on the black. I think I got one more color and then our base coats are down. We're going grimdark, so I'm going to use some oak brown as my base leather color. So this is a kind of multi-purpose color here. I'm going to use it on his hooves, and eventually I'm going to use it on the dry brushing for the tan. Right now, it's a base coat on those weird toe things. Little mummy robes to do the Commander Farsight symbol up in the middle. Oops, flip that over. I want this to be a bit on the thinner side. That's going on sort of like a glaze over the gray that we did before, so we're putting quite a lot of water in. Keep in mind that it looks really bright when it goes on if it's really watery, but that color fades away pretty quick as it dries. He's got some base colors down. Let's get washing. So the blue, I want to kind of darken that down a little bit, but I want it to still be like really distinctly blue. So I'm going to use Blue Tone from Army Painter. We'll start on this kind of inner leg here just to see if it's the look we're going for. It could be that it's not dark enough, which I was a little worried about. So I'm going to add in just a little bit of dark tone as well to that blue. And that stuff's really quite dark, like inky. So that should give us a little more darkness to what we're putting down there. So we don't want too much because we don't want it to pool everywhere. We want to get it all over the blue parts, particularly in the recesses, without letting it kind of pool up anywhere in particular. Right, we got our blue down. I want to get a little red down as well, so I'm going to use, Army Painter Red Shade. And same with blue. Again, I kind of want to get the shading kind of dark here, so I'm going to add in 3 drops of red and 1 drop of dark, just to get a little bit on the dark side. I'm going over all the red again just to kind of even out that earlier stuff, but I'm going to be kind of probably dry brushing a lot of lighter red onto this again. So I really want to just, for the most part, get that into the recesses and kind of just get it spread fairly thinly over, way thinner than what I've got there, so that it helps smooth out color underneath. I think that's where all the red stuff is, except for the robe. Now with this, I really kind of want it to be on fairly thick and take a while to dry on the robes in particular. Not crazy thick, but a little very light pooling in the robes I feel helps add to the robe effect. Again, you don't want to see big, heavy, chunky drops in there, but a little bit kind of building up bottom of the robes is okay. I should clarify, I don't mean like at the bottom of the robes, but like the bottom of the robe details. Here you see there's a little bit thicker here, and that might be a little too thick, so I'll scoop some of that out because the rest of it still has to settle down onto the model. Alright, so we got our blue, we got our red. For the tan, I want to do just a soft tone, I think. So we're going to go with some soft tone for this. Not a huge deal of it. There's not really a lot to cover with it. We want to sort of tan, not khaki, but similar color. And this is just going to help us set like the dark shady bits of this cloth. And you don't want to have a huge deal of pooling of this anywhere. And then I do think I'm going to use some dark tone to give a little grim dark to this. Dark tone I'm just going to use to go over the black stuff just to really make sure that, you know, the black is established and that you know, I cover over any of those little slight discolorations that I might have made from touching it with other areas. But really importantly, what I want to do is get that dark tone in all these little cracks between the black and the other stuff. So this dark tone is really, really dark. It's like an ink for the most part. So getting it in there is going to help kind of mask some of the spots where my red went into the lines a little bit by, for the most part, making the inside of those lines too dark to be able to distinguish colors. Now I'm going to do this dark tone on all the metal stuff as well as all the black stuff, so we're going to slowly work our way up. And what happens, getting this into the adamantine that we put on this little thing of prayer beads here is going to darken it out a fair bit, as well getting it onto the silver. And the adamantine will brighten that up a little bit, but the silver is really what we want to brighten back up after we darken it down. What we're just doing here is kind of just establishing some shade in the grooves and the recesses. So then here, with this dark tone, we really just kind of want to go in at the edges and make sure we're getting it into those cracks so that we have nice, even, flat laps of color by establishing that separation between the yellow and the black by getting the dark tone in the cracks. Alright, so we want to do all the metal stuff too. So the staff is adamantine all the way down, and again, I kind of wanted to give this guy a grim dark look, so getting this black wash in all this metal and darkening it up is really kind of exactly what I'm hoping to accomplish. This will unfortunately make the model very wet, meaning it'll need a while to dry, but we'll do what we can tonight. But most of this is going to be waiting for this guy to dry now, so that we can go back over and highlight him, and then we're pretty nearly finished actually. Overall, this model that was looking kind of goofy before, but now once we get this into those recesses and those cracks, you see it very quickly looks less goofy and more gritty and grimdark. The nice thing is with these washes, they're translucent as well, and this yellow is really just to establish a really simple base color on these flaps. So if you go over it a little bit, you can just kind of wipe it off a bit, and if it's a little patchy, it's not going to be the end of the world. His hair, I do want to do him as a kind of an old man, but he's still going to have some darkness to his hair. I may actually apply this dark tone twice to his hair, just to get it a little bit darker than it is now. So I think then down the bottom, it'd be a good idea to start working our way up to brightening that flag. I'm gonna start mixing in some of that mummy robes that I got earlier, and I go just crazy thin when I'm doing whites all the time because it is such a paint prone to streaking. I just far prefer doing 4 or 5 white layers over time to just trying to knock it out in 2 and ended up with an undesirable end product. I mean, any paint job is something to be proud of, but I think I'm going to use some crystal blue now. I want to do some dry brushing now. So dry brushing, basically just a way of kind of getting paint into the brush and then back off the outside of the brush. You kind of work the paint into the bristles, and then on a paper towel, you want to kind of essentially brush everything back out, mostly at an angle, making sure that there's nothing on the outside of the brush. And then all these little bits of paint on the inside that are still left will get kind of gently deposited as you kind of brush this at an angle over some of those edges. And essentially what we're trying to do here is lay that paint out on the higher parts of the model, which are usually the peaks of his muscles or the edges of armor, things that would usually catch the light. Usually you're going to kind of want to work in the direction that light would be falling as well. So if it's on the inside of the model, maybe don't worry too much about dry brushing that, but definitely the parts that are very visible from the top down, the stuff that you're going to be seeing as a player most often, those are parts of the model you want to make sure you're hitting, because those would in the real world also be the spots catching the most light. And with this guy, we're going to go over him I think with 2 colors. So we're doing this crystal blue first, just to create a distinction between his base skin tone and that kind of deep shadow to him. So we're going to lighten him up a little bit, and then our last highlight is going to be like a really light dry brush over edges specifically, and that's I don't know what color I want to do that yet, but I think I might introduce like a slight greenish tint to it then. So here we're just kind of going back, same wash, a little more dark tone this time, and just kind of going back in some of those recesses that the dry brushing might have accidentally touched, just to make sure we're keeping some of that darkness. And it's more like the under stuff, the stuff that wouldn't be catching the light, the stuff that would be casting shadows. That's the stuff you want to kind of go back in and make sure you're touching up. In the meantime, I think now's a good time to maybe start trying to work on a bit in the middle, as well as those little flaps on his weapon. So we're going to go to that skeleton bone that we put out earlier that I talked about. So I'm getting some, what is this, Dragon Red from Army Painter, and this I'm going to thin out again quite substantially, because this I just want to brighten up the color a little bit on the existing red without going into those recesses. Do this pretty thin, of course, getting it in everywhere, but try to avoid getting it into the recesses, particularly getting it onto like raised corners, raised bits. And since we're doing this pretty thin, it'll settle pretty smoothly. Red can also be a pretty challenging paint color to work with. Reds, yellows, and whites. And in this part, we do want this pretty thin because we are trying to brighten it, but we're trying to brighten it on certain spots, not everywhere across the board. So on the parts that would get light, like the top part of this robe fold, that part should get some paint, this little edge here, but then you see sort of this little shadow under this fold. We don't want to hit that shadow. So that red needs a bit to dry. I think now is a good time to maybe do some highlighting on the metal parts. And so I used Shining Silver before as a base color on a few areas, but right now it's going to be used as the highlight for really all the metallic stuff except for that copper, which I'll come back with and maybe use like a brass or something. For right now, that Shining Silver, I'm just going to load up my my little dry brush from before. Again, kind of in a downward angle. Gently go over the adamantine and the silver bits. Probably going to come back and touch this staff up a little bit later. The last thing I can do for the night is maybe that next level of skin color. This, I think I'm going to use Toxic Mist, which is a really kind of pale, slightly greenish blue. Alright, last bit for the night, and I'm going to go over the red with one more color. This one's going to be pure red. And then we're going to close this one off for the night and finish the rest of it next week, I think. This guy has had his red highlighted a little bit, and I'm seeing there's some kind of areas where it's not perfectly smooth, and I really do want to make a nice sort of transition effect. So I'm going to go back over with some of that red tone, just to help kind of even that out a bit. But this time I'm adding a bit of water in, just because I don't really want to change the color too much, but just improve some of the consistency of the color in between some of the darker and the brighter parts. So this wash kind of helps even some things out sometimes, to at least make the color effect seem a little more smooth. And then afterwards, I'll go back over an edge highlight, but I'm going to save that for the next video, because this, or the next stream, you can already see his robe's getting a pretty cool effect. Got a nice transition here between the various reds here, and I think it'll look better once it's finished, but it's already starting to look like something at least. Alright, I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll finish this baby off next week.
Hey everyone, this is Platonic D, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching our video. We do this to show everyone that your hobbies don't have to be on a professional level for you to enjoy them or share them. We strive to bring positivity to our hobbies and help everyone be more comfortable with just playing and falling into what you enjoy most. Like, comment, and subscribe and all that other jazz in our social media outlets that you can find down below in the description. Hope you join us again next time. And a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. You guys help us out in a major way, and we cannot thank you enough. Thanks.
What is wrong with this guy?